Picture this. You are 5 feet tall, you weigh 140 pounds, and you have just decided to kill something that weighs 10 tons. It has tusks that could turn you into wallpaper. You have a sharpened stick. You are going to win. And in 2019, outside Mexico City, archaeologists pulled 14 mammoth skeletons out of 2 enormous pits. Pits dug by human hands around 15,000 years ago with the express purpose of swallowing giants whole. The site is called Tultepec, and what they found there rewrote a piece of the timeline. The pits were about 5.5 feet deep and roughly 80 feet across. Small swimming pools, basically. Lining the rim were neat arrangements of jaws and tusks and ribs, almost like a museum laid out by the people who killed the exhibits. To dig that with sharpened sticks and antler picks took weeks, and it required something we rarely give early humans credit for: a project plan. Now, the easy answer to how humans killed giants is the one you've seen in 100 cartoons: spear, loincloth, yelling, and that answer is wrong. Stab a mammoth with a stick and you've mostly just made it angry. Pound for pound, you are a joke of a predator. You can't outrun a deer. Your nails wouldn't pierce a banana. Your teeth would lose a fight with a stale bagel. And yet, by the end of the last ice age, your direct ancestors had killed off most of the land animals on Earth heavier than a car. They didn't do it with strength. They did it with tricks. And the first trick is the one we still use against ourselves: digging a hole and pretending it isn't there. So picture trying to kill something the height of a giraffe with a hand-thrown spear. You can't get close enough. The trunk alone could flip a car. Somebody, we don't know who, only that it happened independently in multiple places, invented the atlatl. 2 feet of carved wood with a small hook on the end. You lay your spear along it, snap your wrist, and the lever effectively doubles the speed of your throw. Suddenly, a sharpened stick is moving fast enough to punch clean through hide and bone. You have just invented the world's first ranged weapon. The mammoth has not. The atlatl is at least 17,000 years old, and its equivalents show up on multiple continents. The Australian woomera does the same job. People who never met each other reached for the same physics, because the physics was the only thing that worked. And the killing point on the end of that stick wasn't designed for blunt force. It was designed for bleeding. A Clovis point, made 13,000 years ago in North America, is fluted at the base, so it stays seated in the wound and lets the animal bleed out over hours of walking. The hunter didn't need to be there. The spear did the job by being patient, and we know the spears worked because some of them are still in the bodies. In 1977, on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington state, a farmer named Emmanuel Manis pulled what looked like a fossil tusk out of his pond. It belonged to a mastodon. Embedded in one of its ribs, snapped off and partly healed over, was a needle of sharpened bone made from another mastodon. Someone, around 13,800 years ago, had thrown a spear made from the animal's own kind, and the animal lived long enough to start growing new tissue around the wound. That tells you something brutal and beautiful at once. The hunt was a relay. You wounded the giant, then you followed it, for days, across rivers and ridges, sleeping in shifts, reading bent grass and the smell of infection on the wind. You were never going to win a sprint with a mammoth, but you could win a marathon, because mammals built to carry their own weight overheat in long pursuit, and humans, sweating, bipedal, weirdly endurance-tuned humans, do not. The giant's size, the thing that should have saved it, cooked it from the inside. Then there's the trick that still feels insane. Sometimes you didn't need to kill the giant yourself. You could let gravity do it. For at least 6,000 years, hunters on the North American plains used buffalo jumps. The most famous sites in southern Alberta, head smashed in, named, the legend goes, for a young man who stood under the cliff to watch the spectacle and was buried beneath the herd. People would spend days arranging stone cairns along miles of gathering basin, building a funnel only the animals couldn't quite see. Then a handful of runners, sometimes wearing wolf hides, sometimes calf hides, would spook a herd into the chute. Once the bison were running, momentum did the rest. The ones at the back pushed the ones in front off a cliff about 30 feet high. At the base of Head Smashed In, the bone bed runs more than 30 feet deep. That isn't a hunt. That's an industrial process. And it required an unsettling kind of patience. Weeks of preparation for a few seconds of falling. The intelligence in that plan is the same intelligence that, 10,000 years later, would invent the assembly line. Now wind it back further than any of this, to a coal mine in Germany. In 1994, workers near the town of Schöningen broke through into what turned out to be a 300,000-year-old lakeshore. Lying in the mud were wooden spears. 8 at first, more found since, balanced like javelins, tip-heavy and tapered, shaped by hands that didn't even belong to our species yet. Whoever made those spears was probably Homo heidelbergensis, our ancestor's ancestor, and they were already this good. Around the spears were the bones of around 20 butchered horses, almost certainly run down in a coordinated drive along the lake. Whole family groups, finished in a single event. The hunters were taking healthy adults in their prime. They knew the herd. They knew which deaths would do the most damage to next year's horses and the least damage to themselves. That is the move of a predator that understands ecology before it has a word for ecology. This is also the part of the story where we should probably stop calling these people primitive. And then there is the trick that almost never shows up in the artifact record because it walked off on 4 legs. Somewhere between 30,000 and 15,000 years ago, a wolf decided humans were less dangerous than other wolves, and we decided the same thing back. The fossil record now shows dogs buried alongside humans, actual graves, the dog laid in next to the person, going back at least 14,000 years. The Bonn Oberkassel grave in Germany has a young dog buried with a man and a woman. Around the same time, the mammoths were disappearing. We don't have a video of a dog cornering a mammoth, but we have what dogs still do in every culture that uses them for hunting. They fix the prey. They hold it in place by barking from angles a single hunter could never cover, while the humans circle behind with the spears. A mammoth could outrun any single person. It could not outthink a small primate plus 4 small wolves, all of whom shared a plan they could communicate by sound. The first technology that ever talked back to us had 4 legs and a tail, and we used all of it to empty the world. Before humans spread across the planet, every continent except Antarctica had its own bestiary of giants. Mammoths and mastodons across Eurasia and the Americas. Ground sloths the size of elephants in Argentina. 12-foot kangaroos in Australia. Moas the height of a man in New Zealand. Glyptodonts, armored mammals built like compact cars. Cave bears, cave lions. Saber-toothed cats with canines like steak knives. Then humans arrived, and within a few thousand years of our arrival, nearly all of them were gone. The technical name is the quaternary megafauna extinction, and the debate over how much of it was US versus a changing climate has been running for 50 years. But the climate had wobbled many times before, and the giants had survived. The new variable was a small, soft, social animal with a sharp stick and a long memory. The world you live in is smaller than it should be. Quieter. The big silhouettes on the horizon are the ones we left alive or didn't get to in time, and yet, here you are, 5.5 feet of soft skin and small teeth, standing in line at a grocery store, the descendant of the most dangerous thing that ever walked. The body waiting in that line is, in almost every way that matters, the same body that dug pits at Tultepec and tracked a bleeding mastodon for 4 days across a wet peninsula. The sweat glands that cooked the giants are still cooling you on a summer afternoon. The shoulder that flung an atlatl is the one you use to toss your keys. The cooperation that herded bison off a cliff is the one you use to organize a group dinner. You did not personally hunt a mammoth, but the gestures are still in you, idling like a language you haven't spoken since childhood. So the next time you catch yourself sizing up something across a room, a distance, an angle, a way through, remember, 140 pounds of soft animal once stared down 10 tons of tusk and muscle and decided it could win, and it did. The giants are gone. The hunters never left.